Hey everyone! I'm Lily, and welcome to the early 2023 Librarian Idyll update, which isn't what I wrote on the slide, and as you might notice, I actually put slides together. I'm trying this out for some of these more directed rambles and whatnot that I do. So, I don't know, let me know what you think. Is this helpful? Is it needless information? I don't know. I'm trying it out. Revamping the channel, restarting everything up. Get to try out new things and see how it goes. It means that I don't have to edit in graphics later. So, for those of you who have not followed, for the last few years I've been working on a game called Librarian Idyll. For those of you who don't know, I'm a programmer and a game developer. And let's just start with an overview of development and where it is right now before I get into the point where I completely have been rethinking a lot of things. Before we get into the bigger changes that I've been pondering and then repondering and then maybe going, well actually. But a brief overview. So Librarian Idyll originally started, it spurred out of a group that, shortly after War of the Spark Forsaken came out, a book which I'm not getting into right now, but it was poorly received by the Magic community across the board. Well, either someone didn't like it or they did not care because they didn't follow the lore. That was the main two responses. The kind of people who'd be fine with the stuff that happened in Forsaken weren't the people who really cared about the lore that much. But either way, I posted a pondery that, this was 3 years ago. I was still, in the midst of learning. I got, really starting to get in and, flesh out working on programming and whatnot. Turning it more into a career and whatnot. I made a pondering on Twitter being I actually have the skill set between, art, writing, and programming that I could, make the MTG dating sim that everyone jokes about. And that got a lot more traction than I was hoping for. Suffice to say, a Discord was organized, and we started designing stuff and working on things. And then we looked in some of the fan content policy stuff, and one big no-no on that is you're not allowed to make a game. And there was some back and forth being dating sims we could, do a more, visual novel, interactive visual novel type thing. But, that could still be considered a game, and we don't want to get to a point where, we put, lots and lots of time into this, and then get C&D and have to shut down the whole thing. So, some people still want to work on it, and cool on them. This isn't something I'm still interested in continuing on as, heading this up. If anyone's still interested, because we got a bunch of people with really neat things, want to spin off and do their own game, because there's people interested in doing some game development stuff and doing a community project thing that isn't related to Magic, I'm going to start up a thing. And when we did that, we had a group of people that did that, and the dating sim thing went off and then fizzled out over time. And that's alright. I honestly expected that when I let go of the project. But this group that spun off became what was the team behind what would become Librarian Idyll. We both had a bunch of, not both, we all had a bunch of ideas that we put forward as we were brainstorming concepts for a game to deal with. And Librarian Idyll was actually one of mine. We then put it out on a poll, not a poll, but a survey to get feedback, and Librarian Idyll was one of the ones that was overwhelmingly yes, this sounds like a really cool game. This was actually my original pitch for the game. Wait, I'm on this side right now. Yeah. Your studies and hard work have paid off, your apprenticeship has been completed, and you finally received your first solo assignment by the esteemed Council of Bibliomancers. You are headed to a small village ways out, nestled in the ruins of an ancient city. You've been given the task of reopening their library, which unfortunately closed when its prior curator from the council died without a replacement some years ago. Dazzled by the exciting prospect of managing an entire library on the ancient lore that surrounds the town, you hastily say your farewells to your friends in the capital, and after several weeks of carriages, caravans, and trudging along the roads by foot, you reach your new home. However, upon reaching the side of the library, you discover it had been burned down years ago, most of its tomes and secrets lost or scavenged in the aftermath, and the building destroyed. Your first reassignment to reopen this small-town library may be more than you originally signed up for. Librarian Idyll is a light RPG and management game, falling in the same vein as farming and community sims like Stardew Valley and the Animal Crossing series. Rebuild the library, recover and expand its contents, and in doing so make the village an attractive spot for sages and adventurers to come seeking knowledge. Construct yourself a home that you can move out of the tent given to you by some generous villagers upon your arrival, become part of the community and get to know everyone in the small village, and making a space for yourself there. And of course, the ruins all around town are bound to pique the curiosity of a scholar such as yourself. So we decided to go with this base concept for a game. A few things have changed as development, mostly with the lore. It's not so much an ancient city, but this location called the Band on the World. It's the Council of Bibliomancy rather than Bibliomancers, and I mean, there's some tweaks, but generally speaking, this is what we worked from, was, a game like, Harvest Moon or Animal Crossing, where, you're living in a town, but you're operating kind of like the museum of that town, in a way. And that's kind of what we worked from. You can see prior videos I did, which actually shows off, some stuff that was, development as it was, over a year ago. It has progressed since then, obviously. But, if you want to feel for kind of what we were going for, that's there. Over time, as these projects do, people's lives got busy, especially since, we have been working on this for, over 3 years now. People have gotten busy, people have gotten, just disinterested, not as, that, or, we're only kind of interested, showed up to a few meetings and fell off. And for a while there, it was a core of 3 of us that were working on the project. And, just after, either a section where, I was kind of, away from the project for a while, or a few months, or, one or another, even that group kind of stopped doing stuff. And finally, recently, in the last, 6 months, they were like, okay, yeah, no, life is too busy. That happens. And in short, I am the only person working on the project right now. And at this point, it's moved beyond just being kind of a, hey, this is a fun community project that we want to do. So I haven't been, looking for new people, because if I want to bring on new people at this point, it would be to hire them. And currently, that's not within the scope of the game and what the current investment into the game is currently. Presently, I still possess all the skills needed to make that on my own, for the most part, and, it's one of those things where it's, if I can get to, an open beta state, and I might then contract with some people to, do things that I'm not as skilled in, things like getting a soundtrack or things like that. But suffice it to say, since the last update, I am the only person working on the game currently, which last month, it kind of hit me being like, wait, I'm the only person on the game now, which means I have complete creative control, and I should have never been given this power. Which made me ponder a few things. And like the title card of the thing, the thing's code is Lily rethinks everything, and then rethinks rethinking everything. Essentially, I went through and almost had an idea for a complete reconceptualization of the game that really was a lot more attractive to me. At least at the time, where it felt much more compact. Still take place in the same world that had been built, because, I've put a lot of effort into, writing books and the backstory and things like that, where that's actually been a non-significant amount of time spent. Maybe not the best spent time, but, it's a non-trivial amount of time. I've written, over 500 books that are in the game, not counting their premium counterparts. and in either conception of the game, they would still exist as books in the game. But then I was like, actually, maybe, no, I think there are still elements that I like from the original that I want to keep. But I might not refactor, but like refocus a bit. I might also do some refactoring on the actual code and whatnot, but the first major change was to the setting and backstory of the character. So in the original, you were trained and graduated. You were a fresh graduate in your early 20s, trained as a book wizard by the Council of Bibliomancy. They are a government institution who does a lot of things, but one thing they do is they run all the libraries in the nation of Twelend you currently reside in. Well, I guess technically the Kingdom of Twelend. Nationalism as a concept is only burgeoning and hasn't really taken form in Twelend currently. But that's beside the point for this right now. But essentially, as your first assignment, you get assigned to the far-off village of, we were thinking of Lakeshore, but Lakeshore never because, the idea, it was always established, it's by this lake and nestled in the ruins of the band and all that. And that was one name that other people came up with, and I was like, it's not terrible. I don't have a good reason backed for it, but I think Lakeshore, and I just think of the Lakeshore Learning Store in Bellevue, because I went there a lot growing up because my mom was a teacher, which I just can't get that associated out of my head, and I might end up changing that just because I think it's a fine name. I don't think it's a bad name, but I think I might need to change that. But suffice it to say, you were sent to this village, way far off from the capital city where you grew up, so very different landscape and all that. And with the task of reopening the library, which you discover upon being there, burned down. It's sold to Council of Bibliomancy years ago, but the letter got lost in the mail or just got caught up in bureaucracy, and they're only just now getting around to getting you here, even though it burned down 10 years ago. The former bibliomancer, Dariel, went missing shortly before it burned down, and no one knew what they were up to or anything like that. So part of the story was kind of tracking down, what happened to Dariel and all that. And also, rebuilding up the library and helping fix up the town a bit too while you're at it. So that was the original thing, and I like this background. I still like it. It is still ultimately, I think, what we're going to be. I'm used to saying we, but that's fine. It's what I'm going to be going with. Maybe some details and names swapped or tweaked to just make it work a bit better. But generally speaking, you arrive here, you're opening the library. It takes in this, farming village way out, and as opposed to this idea in the revamp where it's again running a library, but you were instead expelled from the cob, shortly into, towards the end of your education. At the end, I will go through and read the list of all the reasons I came up with you were expelled. But the idea is, at the start of the game, you're filling out the expulsion sheet form from the Council of Bibliomancy for when you put in your name and things like that. One of the drop-down, random buttons for random reasons you're expelled. It was an idea I had, but I don't know. I'm not using this idea now, so I'll read them at the end of the video. But at the end of the day, the idea being that you were expelled from the cob and you were bitter about this, so you're going to set up a new rival, free from, the council's, censorship or oversight that you can do, make a library for the community in one of the more downtrodden parts of Leon, partially because, these are the people who need access to this information the most, and also it's where rent is cheapest. But in this conception of the game, it would be much more focused on the library rather than the greater community. A big part of the theme that we've been working on so far with Librarian Idyll is how the library's place in the ecosystem of the community as a whole, in terms of providing community services, and not just the, it's a place where you store books, but the library is a center of the community, and as an extension, it cares about the stories and what's going on with the community also. A big part of the story is, around the time that Dariel disappeared, the lake that they're next to, its shoreline decreased a significant amount. It's, a good, few dozen yards down, and it's no longer safe to navigate by boat. And this has done a number on the economy of the town, who cannot ship a lot of the goods across the lake, and it connects to a river that you can sail all the way down to, the capital in Leon. But you can't do that anymore. But instead, in this backstory, did I forget anything else in the backstory? Yeah, that's it. But this one, it would be much more focused on the library itself and building that. Like, there is community stuff, but you only really go out to do services, and there might be some quest things, but it would be more on individual characters rather than the effect of the library on the neighborhood that you're in, which is something that might be explored, but in terms of the core concept of the game, it'd be much more focused on the development of this library with, your interactions with the cop as, you get more and more successful, where it's like, oh, we see we were wrong to expel you, let us back in. Maybe you have a choice of, whether you actually want to rejoin and become accredited with the Council of Bowmancy and whatnot. But ultimately, even when the code name for the game of Librarian Idyll, it was kind of supposed to be this, pastoral, idyllic village that you're going out to is meant to be this split between this age of industrialization capital of Leon, this imperial capital with all the changes that the industrial revolution causes in the society, to you grew up and were living this thing, to a place that was kind of outside of that, almost like what you see with a lot of Studio Ghibli films, where the idea of there is rapid societal change happening, but we're actually going to view it either from a few steps removed, and a lot of those effects hasn't affected Lakeshore yet, but it is starting to, and things are starting to change. You're starting to see that, but it is still kind of this place out of a bit out of time with modernity, which is rapidly arriving in the capital of Leon. And while I like the setting of a game in Leon, and it's one of those things where it's down the road, I want to explore the concept of having a library or something else in the city of Leon, because I really like all the lore I've written for the Leon, which is the capital city. But this is not the time for this. Part of the appeal, part of the original concept hinged around the idea of you are the center of knowledge about this in an era of rapidly increasing knowledge and understanding and interconnectedness of the world, in a place that hasn't been touched by that yet, and kind of the juxtaposition of that. And that is crucial to a lot of the themes and writing and stuff I had in the game, and stuff I don't want to get rid of necessarily. And it loses a bit of that if I'm just having it in Leon proper, because the issues are a bit too up in front and center, because ultimately the game isn't necessarily about a commentary on, the effects of industrialization on people and developed in small communities outside of there. It's more setting kind of a tonal contrast in the story. But yeah, so also I apologize if my voice is anywhere. I have this time of year every year, almost always, my allergies start acting up and my throat's a bit swollen. So there's gonna be lots of cuts as I make marks of oh, Lily's got a cough. So yeah, little secret, if you ever see a cut in the video where it blends in, it's probably because Lily had to sneeze. Right now, one moment. There. It never even happened, thanks to the magic of editing. But this brings us back to change 2, which is the change in concepts for these games is also going to involve a large gameplay focus shift. So the original, like I said before, was more in line with community simulators like Stardew Valley and the where, you have the thing you're caring about, where you're not caring about a farm, or I guess you care about everything in Animal Crossing, but you're talking about like, the museum library function that most of these games have. I mean, a big part of the gameplay is, the going out in the world and getting like wood and other resources to, build more furniture and find books while you're out exploring, and talking to the various NPCs and, having their stories woven into everything there. But very much, there isn't as much a focus, like, the library is here and you do things in the library, but most of the day-to-day operations, and like, what, if you talk to a librarian or a library worker and be like, what do you do when running a library? The mundane stuff is kind of abstracted of, you do it before you go to bed, and you can do it a lot faster because, you're a trained book wizard and can, snap your fingers and, oh look, everything's reshelved, and anything that needs to be, you don't need a scan because you can just kind of be like, detect out of place book and things like that. So you're not having to do that a lot, and there was a lot of just abstraction for that, just because, of the genre of game that we're going for. It isn't a day-to-day operations of a library simulator, you're running a library in a small community. And the main gameplay loop is essentially, it's a lot less tight gameplay loop, core gameplay loop, where, there's a lot, it's like a very loose where you're trying to make the library better, but you're also trying to get your skills going and progress the things where it's like, every point in the loop is a goal in and of itself, and they all feed into the other. It's like, when you get better at your skills to, gather resources better, which helps the library, which, helps, improve your status in the town, which helps you do NPC stuff, which helps with the main quest, which, helps you unlock more skills and library stuff, which in turn, and so on and so forth. So it's kind of a, it's less of a core gameplay loop and like a mesh that everything is interconnected with. So, which at the end of the day was kind of like, there isn't as much of a core gameplay loop. There's lots of gameplay loops of like, you want to add books to the library to, increase your renown and attract more people, which, will cause more, I shouldn't be like fussing with the random hair that's trying to get in my mouth while I'm recording, but that would be sensible. There you are. It was bothering me. I'll edit my coughs out, but not that. No, I am lazy. What was I saying? And like, there's a loop there, but like, that's not the only way to get books, where it's like, oh, you get more money you can buy books and things like that, but it's not the only way you can get books. You get the resources, so they all kind of feed into each other. So it is not of a tight core gameplay loop as I would like. But in the revamp, is essentially the core gameplay loop is you open the library and you have a bunch of tasks that you need to do, where, it's much more focused on the day-to-day operations, where, there might be, some rubbish or books that have been put on the floor, or, there's, you need to rescan the shelves and see if anything is in the wrong place or out of things. A patron has arrived and needs help and needs to talk to it. You need to shush some children who are, being a bit too rowdy, or, and this would also tie into things like modules, where it's like, as you, like, the core gameplay loop doesn't care about this much, but, the better you do with running these things, and then with other things like modules, which might, and other effects, which increase the amount of people, but the better you run the library, the more people you get, and the more people you get, and the happier they are, and the happier they leave, they will, like it more, and you'll end up getting more funding from both, like, the town and the cob, and so on and so forth. And that is the core loop, where you're running a day. And then we might add some things where it's like, before or after a day, you can, like, visit things and whatnot, but it's a much tighter gameplay system, where, when you're running a day, you shouldn't be leaving the library. You wouldn't leave the library without getting some penalties or whatnot. Words and things. But yeah, so no, the idea of like having this much tighter loop, and also having this refocus on the day-to-day operations, and like this is the idea where you're in Leon, so it's like less of the focus on the communities, but you can still, like, you know, at the end of the day, you pop out onto the street and head to the market and, you know, buy some more chairs because you want to fill up the chair. And, you know, modules might still have the idea of, like, you know, they have different buffs and debuffs and you can improve them and all that. But then, you know, different modules also have, like, you know, different tasks. Some modules require more maintenance than other things. And then for late game, like, you know, when you can hire other NPCs who might be able to, you know, help run or manage some things, where it's like, you know, you can get someone at the front desk who will manage anyone who's coming to the front desk, so you don't have to figure that out. You might still get, like, you know, pinged where it's like, you know, this wizard from out of town, but, you know, they'll handle, like, the locals who are finding things. Sorry, I'm just rambling now. Although I guess that's kind of what this is, but who knows. But generally speaking, the idea of keeping the outside of kind of simple. Like, there is story stuff, but it's, you know, it's less of a, oh, we can actually, like, physically move around town and walk there, but more like, you know, you head out and it's like a map pops up and it's like, which place you want to visit. And there might be people there, or, like, it might add in story elements that goes along with it, but not as much for that. So, essentially from those, what I'm taking from these two things, which is the, I should not throw away everything I've already made. I mean, apart from, like, the lore and the world and whatnot. I still want to do a refactorization of the code and making that a bit more tight, because, I don't know, I have nebulous feelings about how the code is structured and how the systems are interconnected, that it feels a bit too loose for me, and I would like to shift more of the focus to the day-to-day library operations, and having a stronger core loop also means there's a stronger core set of systems that are the code base can be built around. When I'm talking about the actual gameplay systems, not like things like the audio and graphics libraries and things like that, which those are fine. I can't really explain it without getting way into how I've structured the code base and all that, and I don't want to do that because I'm bad at that, and I don't want other programmers watching this video to judge me. My individual classes and whatnot, fantastic. Overall project architecture, the setting of Lakeshore, or at least whatever it's renamed, is still a great setting. I like the initial story, I like all that can all stay, and I think it's important to the identity of the game. And likewise, you know, being part of the COB allows some lore stuff where, you know, I like it because you're far off, you're still part of the COB, but you are the COB in this town, so it's not so much as part of an organization as you are, you know, a member of an organization rather than working for them necessarily. It allows, like, you know, some systems where, you know, requesting books from their archives and whatnot, which I still like. But mechanically, shifting to more of this focus on the day-to-day operations, kind of going for a middle ground of the two games. Very much focusing on that core gameplay loop, where kind of taking a middle ground where there is still a lot of the kind of, like, you know, Stardew type, there is a town you can go out to and you can walk out the front door, but the idea is that there is a set mechanic for opening and closing the library, and, you know, as you go on, you know, you can get the benefit of, like, you know, a schedule, which, okay, we're good. Like a schedule, which, you know, if people know when the library is going to be open, you get more people who come and things like that. But the idea that if the library is open, you should be there at least until, like, you know, mid to late game, where you have unlocked some NPCs who can run the library in their absence, if not as efficiently. You know, you can have the library closed and head out in town or explore, or, you know, even do things like the more traditional, like, you know, gather wood to, you know, make some chairs to help build out and flesh out the library and all that. But the idea being, it is still focused on this core loop. You still have to open the library sometimes and run it, at least for a time, where, you know, whenever you open the library, you can be like, how long are you open for? Or it's open until you know, head out for the day. Or, you know, it's become, like, you know, 6 o'clock and, like, that's the time the library's gonna close. Or whatever. But essentially the idea is that like I can to focus a bit of programming to make it work. Make a game where if all the outside features didn't work, you're here, patrons come to the library, they give you tasks, you do them. That makes them happy, you get a better score. And getting that core game made and expand from there. Because one thing with, Stardew style games is that there's a lot of systems you have in place before the gameplay is emergent, because it is this gameplay mesh, where if you only have like a couple of the meshes, those aren't really fleshed out or complete games. You need all of the mesh. I hope that analogy makes sense. But having the stronger loop, and I guess I'm just explaining the benefits of having a strong gameplay loop, which is not a revelation in game design or game theory. But what I am saying is I didn't have this, and it is bad. Essentially having this core gameplay loop where I can then build off of that, and it gets me much closer to what I could really consider to be a playable alpha state, where, I can say, hey, this is a game. It is theoretically fun. Friends, I'm going to force you to play this. And essentially build it out to being kind of the more, community sim-esque, essentially, but still maintain this core loop at the center of the game, rather than the community focus being it's just kind of blended back in here. Oh, people are coming and going to the library even if you're not there. But, having, at the end of the day, it kind of means like, what I'm adding at the end of the day is the idea that the library is opened or closed, which isn't a huge thing, but it makes sense that there's almost a different game that you're playing when you're inside. And I may even do things like where, you can't rearrange furniture while, the inside of the library is running. While the library's open, because it's there's patrons there who might get in the way and all that. So this is what I'm thinking about doing, which means that, I have a bit of work ahead of me to get this core loop in. I'm probably going to actually make a new project and start importing chunks of code as I need them, but taking out most of the gameplay stuff and, world information and how the world is built and structured around it. And essentially, let's just build this game, the bare bones of, person spawns here, people come in, they cause problems, you gotta fix the problems. If you don't fix the problems enough, they don't like you, you get bad score, which later on in systems will convert to, general reputation and money and things like that. And then one big part of this is that in the backstory, the library being turned down at the start of the game needs to go. Whether because Tail, the only remaining carpenter in town, heard about this in advance, being like, we have a bibliomancer coming, but our library burned down. If we don't have a library, they may not stay here. And they have it built for you when you arrive, or, in the backstory, the library didn't burn down, although I am kind of leaning towards the former, because the idea that you want to expand the library and make it bigger, which is, more space you gotta keep track of for the, core gameplay. So there's positive and negatives, but, it gets harder because that's what games do. As you get better and you get a handle on them, they get harder. You have to, deal with a larger main room, and now you have to deal with multiple floors and all that. But I'm leaning towards Tail doing it, because that would explain why the start is just a small one-room area, because it's they didn't have time, but here is something that isn't just nothing. So yeah, but at the end of the day, that revelation that I had back in December and thought about, this is what I'm thinking, and this is what I'm kind of shifting the focus to. And overall, I'm actually really happy with it. But I mean, obviously, let me know your thoughts and how, does this make sense? I guess this has just been me rambling, talking about how core gameplay loops are important. But, yeah, I don't know. At the end of the day, it's not a huge reconceptualization of what the game is, because I want to get to all the other surrounding features that I designed and things like that. But essentially, instead of being a mesh, they are add-ons to the core bit of it, which is, how you're supposed to design games, theoretically. I mean, assuming you subscribe to this whole notion, but it's much more of a, So when you're not doing some really weird abstract thing, this is helpful to identify. Really weird abstract thing, or, a game that isn't... You can have a looser loop if it's a game that has a lot more... Yeah, that's not even true. Ignore me. But recently, I had another idea, which begged me to consider an assumption that had been made at the start of the project that had never been challenged. And I've been coming into some problems with things, because, I wasn't always the only artist, so that wasn't a concern. I wasn't planning on doing the art. I mean, I know my way around a Wacom. Which actually isn't something that I had at the beginning of the project. I have to teach myself digital art, who's been a traditional artist before that. But I'm not. It's not a specialty of mine. Which does mean that, but I do have some limitations. One of which is I'm really bad at drawing people. And recently I thought, it was like, nowhere in the rules says it has to be people. And I do really like another thing. So have you considered, instead of having your run-of-the-mill humans who had once had a spacefaring empire and revered, their, god Imperial, Ilwe dwell, and, since the fall of the Ilwen Empire, have, built a bunch of, kingdoms and whatnot across the land, and have, begun to re-industrialize and all that. They don't have to be people. But have you considered if they were bunnies? Right, they're over here still. I'm not sure about this idea, but I am considering it. Pros. They're fluffy little buns. I haven't talked about it a lot, like, here or ever, outside. It's something I actually recently realized, where being like, I really don't talk about how much I like them, for how much I adore bunnies. They're my favorite animal. They are so cute. Oh my goodness. But notably, I'm very bad at drawing people. But, I hadn't actually really tried drawing bunnies much before yesterday. And you know what? I don't hate it. I'm still playing around with styles and all that and how I want to do that. But I am way happier with these than I ever was for any of my human drawings, because I'm bad at anatomy. And I would say I look at people more than bunnies, but I still do. If I had my way, I wouldn't. But I know what a person looks like, so it's easier to draw like an abstraction of like a bunny or something like that rather than that. But yeah, I'm actually leaning towards like, where's my thing? Like this one with the oval shape, but I'm still figuring out, because it's supposed to work with like, a sprite and having like animations and mostly they're head on or like peripherally sideways. Apart from chat bubbles. I don't know. But at the end of the day, I'm bad at drawing people, but I am decent at drawing bunnies if one day of practice has helped. These are literally the first 4 bunnies I think I have drawn since like high school. So, They're cute little noses. Like, oh my gosh, they're so much fun to draw. Here's the quick tip. You just do like a little carrot with like a little thing, and you just shade a bit above it. And it's like, oh look, it's a little snoot, it's a little thing, and they're so fluffy and nice, and their cute little ears and all that. I really like bunnies. If my people like the game and make fan art, I get to look at more pictures of bunnies. Isn't that great? Yeah, I could furry porn people, but let's be honest, if your thing is, any of your things is popular, Rule 34 is a thing. I think that's the porn one, but people make porn of it, and quite frankly, I have more respect for the average furry porn artist than the average video game porn artist, which is just, I don't know, unimaginative generally. I mean, I know there's plenty of unimaginative furry porn art, but some of it is actually rather quite nice. I'm not a furry, but, you know, I respect art, and I'm just gonna leave it as there. It also makes some things easier with, like, character customization, because you don't have to deal with, like, hair. Like, the player character can just be a single bunny shape. Like, NPCs can have, like, you know, different things with, like, you know, different tufts of hair, because if I want to make, I don't know, Bunny Mark Van Buren, I don't know why that was going for, but it was just, I was thinking, you know, big tufts like mutton chops. And I guess my first impression when I think of mutton chops is former U.S. President Martin Van Buren, for some reason. But then otherwise I just need to overlay a fur pattern and not, like, have a different silhouette, which is like, yeah, that's great. That's so much easier. Also, I don't know, more fun animations. They're cute. Did I mention furries again? Like, it's not gonna be, like, you know, overly humanoid or anything like that. They're just gonna be, like, you know, anthropomorphic bunnies. Like, I don't know. I don't mean to feel like, you know, purposefully targeting that, but I mean, it is a demographic. Some of them even play video games. I've heard some of them know how the computer works. Yes, I am aware of the number of furries in tech. That is the joke, just in case you're wondering if I actually know that or not. Yeah. The bottom of my eye is... What is going... Is that even visible on camera? I think I have a blood pressure issue. Welcome to Lily Talks About Game Design, and also what is going on with her body at any moment. It's too much information in both the I'll end up lore dumping on you, and also, why did we need to hear about your eye feeling weird because of a blood pressure thing, probably? Only here on Lily's Library. Aren't you glad I'm back? Oh. Cons of Bunnies. First of all, I've written most of the lore with humans in mind. It's mostly lore issues dealing with the negatives for it, because it's like, I mean, on the other hand, it's like, you know, I don't have to draw humans and both bunnies, which is just like a positive. I mean, there's also just the neutral of, like, it is a tonal shift and it does shift things, but I don't think it's a negative tonal shift. I think it amplifies some things in a way. But I do have to go through all the books and all the lore, because, like, you know, I have made some assumptions about they're humans, and, like, I don't know, it would be weird for bunnies to have, like, dogs that are, like, dog size compared to, like, a human being bunny size. Like, that feels weird. Same thing with any sort of, like, animal products or meat, because A, they're vegetarians, and, herbivores, that's the name. And also just some, like, fleshing out of, like, are they human sized, or just gonna ignore other animals, or are they bunny sized, or, like, you know, somewhere in between because they're anthropomorphized, like, you know, are they, like, just hobbits but they're bunnies? That's honestly what I'm leaning towards. But actually, that sounds really good. That might be the way to go. But there's just some stuff I can work out there, and, like, you know, make some scale things that might need to change. But, like, you know, there's some books on, like, dogs as pets, and that probably will need to change. But then also some of the larger background stuff is, I don't know, kind of dark for when you're just little cute little bunnies with their little paws doing imperialism on other bunnies. Like, I mean, there's a certain charm to that contrast, because it's, like, never shown on screen. Like, that's all, like, in the depths of books and stuff like that, because, I mean, that's the only reason this world I've done so much role-playing for this game, is that, you know, if it was a farming sim that was about this area, I could get away with, like, you know, it doesn't really matter, I can build it as I need it. But I want to have all these books and not have generic books, and you're the center of knowledge in this world, and knowledge does not live without the context in the world it is. Like, I could have just a bunch of generic books about, like, you know, history about such and such, but I don't know, I've DM'd too much, and I enjoy writing lore, so I wrote a lot of it. And ultimately what it comes down to is that it'll take some hours on my part to go through everything and make sure it all works. Which isn't really that much of a con, and I'm really considering it, but like, I don't know. If you have an opinion on changing everything to bunnies, like, bunnies, like, they're so cute. Oh my goodness. And there's things like funny the idea that, like, there's this pantheon of 10 gods, and they're all rabbits, which is kind of funny to me. The god Imperial, Idyll, is a bunny now. Isn't that great? Look, it's their Majesty, the Sovereign of Leon, as a rabbit. Look at them. They're great. Well, let me know what you think. Like, I don't know. Is that too jarring of a shift in your opinion? Or, I don't know. I mean, I might need to do... I might do a, another video, or like actually show up like, what I've been working on, even if I'm to be doing this like refactor and like, let's partition off all of this while we build this core game and then reintroduce it into the environment and see how it affects the ecosystem. That didn't make sense. I mean, it did, but it was, why did you have to make that weird, Lily? You could have just said it like a normal person would. But, yeah, but besides that, I might do a video being like, here's what I'm working on. I have a really cool system for how books are displayed with, like, the library cards. Because books so far, like, you can read a few of them, but most of them are just, name, author, place in the cop categorization system, and then like an abstract of what the thing is about. But made them so there were these, cards. I might put it here at some point if I remember an example one of them. But I made it look like the card catalog card for thing where it's, it has the tab, it's color coded, it has like, a stamp for like the Council of Bibliomancy, and it's like all set up of like, the printed out like, author line, if last name, first name, or the title of the book and the abstract there, and had a cool like a golden like edge to it if it was a premium book, and I don't know, I was very happy with how these turned out. I don't know, I'm just now feeling like, yeah, I got them, but I might do a video showing off some of that, but I also might not if I'm going to be revamping things, but you'll definitely see it once I have a working model for that. And also switching everything over to Bunnies that is a separate issue from the revamping, because that's just having to go through the lore, and I mean, if I did a revamp, I'd probably, do a refresh of the graphics as well while in there. I mean, whatever I do, it is I do lose some work that I've done, but it is in service, and I think will overall improve the game. Notably, also keep your eyes open. I am working on posting soon a different project, which I'm probably going to just be hosting free on itch. Although I'm going to be fairly quiet about how it is. Just in general, I don't want to go too much in the background because that takes away from an aspect of it, because it is more of a artsy-fartsy thing. But stay tuned for that. I'll post when that is up. I'll probably do a video when like that is finally up. In the not too distant future, I was hoping to get it up by the new year, but life has happened, and I've been running into issues with the web hosting of it, and just, issues that weren't there in the version I was doing, with like the desktop version of it, and that were coming up with the web app version, so I have to work out all the kinks there. But, and now, as we've approached the end of this video, I'd like to present to you the 60 possible reasons you were expelled from the Council of Bibliomancy. That I won't use because I ended up not using that concept of the revamp of the game, but I had fun writing these. Number 1. Insufficient disdain for the Library of the Magistrate system. Pyromancy. parentheses, high power, low control. General tomfoolery. Curfew violation, parentheses, temporal manipulation. Pet loose in the dean's office. Talking and silent reading wing, third strike. Teeth, miscellaneous. Unsupervised cryomancy. Unsanctioned use of cafeteria facilities. Noise violation. Heresy, miscellaneous. Failure to cover academic dishonesty. Misfiled reports. Mislabeled specimen jars. Use of mind magics on faculty. Eels. Unauthorized annotation standards. Excessive dog-earing. Soup, parentheses, animated. Insufficient veneration of sovereign. Excessive veneration of sovereign. Inappropriate veneration of sovereign. Forgery. 1,034 sparrows in the senior bibliomancer's residence. The Noodle Incident. Mockery of the Cobb categorization system. Failure to use Cobb categorization system. Untreated hysteria. Eels. Again. Inappropriate use of alchemical laboratories. Mathematical ineptitude. Fight with war mage students. Parentheses, lost. Fraternizing with war mage students. Asking too many questions. Illicit use of herbs. Odor. Parentheses, other. Trapped professor in temporal loop. Faked illness to get out of attending dean's poetry recital. Shenanigan, parentheses, singular. Ate too many pears. Formatting violation. Insufficient passion for paperwork. This and that. The incident with the hair. Insubordination, parentheses, pyromancy. Rule breaking, parentheses, all. Unsanctioned squirrel colony. Was a jerk. Evil. General incompetence. Bureaucratic meddling. Inattentiveness to studies. This and that, parentheses, again. Unsanctioned ink compositions. Personal request of a magister. Heresy, parentheses, one of those demon cults popular with the youth. Suspected extraterrestrial. Thesis defense, parentheses, their lack of. Wrong place, wrong time, parentheses, do not care. And finally, they know what they did. And with that, may your story smile upon you.